Elabeth May Lodemeyer was a vibrant 25-year-old woman from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, whose life was tragically cut short under mysterious circumstances. At the time of her disappearance in 1974, Elabeth had recently separated from her husband, Gene Lodemeyer, and was beginning a new chapter in her life with someone she hoped would be her future. She worked as a social worker at the Community Services Office, a job that she loved and excelled at. Known for her deep empathy and her unwavering commitment to helping others, Elabeth was highly respected both at work and within her circle of family and friends. On the evening of Wednesday, March 6, 1974, Elabeth had plans to spend a quiet evening at home. She intended to bake bread, a simple, domestic task, but her evening was about to take a dark turn. Elabeth had recently begun dating Jerry Thomas, a man who lived in Sioux Falls. On that particular evening, Jerry was away on a business trip, but he called her several times. Elabeth never answered. It wasn't like her to ignore calls, especially from someone she was getting close to. The fact that she didn't answer the phone, paired with her absence from work the following morning, sent a clear signal to those who knew her. Something was terribly wrong. Elabeth's co-workers, who knew her as dependable and punctual, became immediately concerned when she didn't show up for her shift on Thursday. This was completely out of character for her, as she was someone who would always call if she couldn't make it to work. Her absence was not just noticed, it was felt. They quickly alerted the Sioux Falls Police Department, sparking the beginning of an investigation that would stretch on for years, leaving more questions than answers. The search for Elabeth began at her home, where investigators found no signs of forced entry or a struggle. Everything appeared undisturbed, but there were a few details that indicated something had gone awry. A pizza, partially eaten with a single slice missing, sat on the kitchen floor. In the midst of the kitchen chaos, an unbaked loaf of bread sat on the counter, dusted with flour. It was as if she had been interrupted mid-task. Nothing was in its place, but at the same time, there was nothing to suggest that Elabeth had left her home willingly. Investigators quickly realized that foul play was likely involved. They made public appeals, urging anyone with information to come forward. The local community, though supportive, offered few tangible leads. Meanwhile, Elabeth's family, particularly her parents Leslie and Mildred Keller, were devastated. They knew their daughter well enough to believe that she wouldn't just disappear on her own. Their desperation led them to pen a heartfelt letter to the local newspaper, pleading for the public's help. In this letter, they expressed the anguish of not knowing where Elabeth had gone, asking the people of Sioux Falls to aid in the search for her. Despite the mounting effort, the investigation stagnated. Weeks turned into months without substantial progress. It wasn't until October 10, 1974, that something of interest was discovered. 3 of Elabeth's credit cards were found at the Dauphin train station in Manitoba, Canada. This discovery, though puzzling, did little to explain her disappearance. Law enforcement suspected that the cards were planted as a deliberate red herring, but that didn't eliminate the possibility that Elabeth could have been involved in something far more sinister. With few new leads emerging, Elabeth's case seemed to stall. But those who knew her best, the people she worked with, her friends and her family, refused to believe that she had simply vanished without a trace. Elabeth was the youngest of 4 children and had an incredibly close-knit family. She had always been responsible, reliable, and caring. Her sudden disappearance defied all logic. She wasn't the kind of person who would leave her life behind, especially not at the age of 25, with so much promise ahead. Elabeth's troubled marriage to Gene Lodemeyer remained a point of focus throughout the investigation. Though her family had always been wary of Gene, it wasn't until after their separation that they began to understand just how toxic the relationship had been. Gene was described as charming, but also manipulative, and his behavior in the years leading up to Elabeth's disappearance grew increasingly erratic. Elabeth's sister, Sandra, recalled that Gene had sometimes interfered with her ability to attend college, even disabling her car to prevent her from driving to classes. But perhaps the most troubling insight came from Elabeth's niece, Chris Jacobson, who remembered a moment in the car when Jean had become enraged and violent, smashing the steering wheel in a fit of anger. Chris believed that Jean was a master manipulator and that Elizabeth, in her kindness, had fallen for it, thinking she could change him. Their divorce, which was set to be finalized just weeks after Elizabeth disappeared, cast a shadow over the investigation. In a deposition during the divorce proceedings, Elizabeth had testified about physical abuse she had suffered at the hands of her husband. Jean denied the accusations, but Elizabeth's testimony made it clear that the marriage had been far from healthy. It was within this context, Elizabeth's desire to break free from a controlling and abusive relationship, that her sudden and mysterious disappearance became all the more suspicious. Shortly after Elizabeth's disappearance, Jean became a person of interest in the investigation. Although police did not publicly name him a suspect, they certainly seemed to think he was involved. Jean's behavior was difficult to ignore, especially when, 3 months later, he claimed that he had been attacked by a man with a gun, someone who had supposedly shot him in the hand. Jean insisted that the gunman was likely responsible for Elizabeth's disappearance, but there were no witnesses to back up his claim. Investigators were left with more questions and fewer answers. As the years went by, the case grew colder. Jean Lodermeyer's criminal activities. He was arrested on multiple charges over the years, kept him in the news, but they did little to shed light on Elizabeth's disappearance. It wasn't until 1980 that the case was officially classified as a homicide, though no physical evidence could confirm that she had been killed. Those close to her were certain that Jean had played a role in her disappearance, but without definitive proof, the case remained open and unresolved. A glimmer of hope appeared in 1992 when a farmer found Elizabeth's purse along the Big Sioux River. It was in pristine condition, suggesting it had been recently placed there, though no additional evidence was found in the area. It was a cruel tease, a sign that there was still a chance to find answers, but no new leads emerged. Jean continued to deny any involvement in Elizabeth's disappearance, even after serving time for various crimes. He died in 2013 without ever being charged in connection with her case. The family's desire for closure remained unmet, but their love for Elizabeth never faded. Jerry Thomas, her former boyfriend, also held out hope that one day the truth would come to light. Despite his eventual marriage, Jerry never forgot Elizabeth. The pain of her disappearance stayed with him, and he wished she could finally have a proper resting place. Elizabeth's case was periodically revisited by the Sioux Falls Police Department, who held a press conference in 2016 to keep her memory alive and to appeal for any new information that could help bring closure. Detective Pat Merites emphasized that no tip was too small, as it could be the key to solving the case. But to this day, Elizabeth's disappearance remains an unsolved mystery. Elizabeth May Lodermeyer was 25 years old when she vanished from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, in March 1974. Standing 5 feet 1 inch tall with brown hair and green eyes, she left behind a life full of potential and a family who never stopped looking for her. If you have any information about her case, please contact the Sioux Falls Police Department at 605-367-7234. Vicki Lamberton's story is one of mystery, unfulfilled promises, and unanswered questions that lingered decades after her disappearance. Born and raised in Harper, Kansas, Lamberton was the kind of person who always seemed to be on the edge of something bigger, her life full of potential as she navigated the demands of higher education and personal relationships. By February of 1974, however, she had already begun to drift away from the life she had known, leaving her husband, moving into a new space, and entangling herself in a web of complex connections that would eventually be shrouded in uncertainty. At the time of her disappearance, Lamberton was a graduate student working on her master's degree in psychology at Assumption College in Worcester, Massachusetts. She had completed her undergraduate degree at nearby Clark University, and her future seemed to be set, at least outwardly. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to form in her personal life. Her marriage had unraveled, and she had separated from her husband by February of that year, a turning point that marked the beginning of her eventual disappearance. Just weeks before she vanished, Lamberton had moved out of the residence she had shared with her husband and one of her brothers. It was during this period that Lamberton stored the majority of her belongings in a garage owned by one of her professors, Dr. Roger Barker, a respected psychology professor at Assumption College. Dr. Barker was not only a mentor to Lamberton, but also someone who appeared to play a significant role in her life during this turbulent period. He helped her move her things, and even accompanied her on a trip to New York City in early 1974, where she applied for a doctorate in psychology at Columbia University. Her life, it seemed, was in transition, a new chapter in her academic career that was marked by both promise and uncertainty. However, there were whispers of something more between Lamberton and Dr. Barker. Her estranged husband had his suspicions about their relationship, although this has never been definitively confirmed. He and her brother had reportedly seen the two together at a local shopping mall in Worcester, sparking doubts about the true nature of their connection. Whether or not their relationship was romantic remains a mystery, but it certainly added another layer of intrigue to Lamberton's sudden and unexplained disappearance. The last known interaction between Lamberton and her husband took place in February 1974. After several weeks of separation, Lamberton called her husband, and the two discussed the possibility of reconciliation. She told him she would meet him after a weekend trip to Maine, which she was planning to take with one of her girlfriends. But when Lamberton failed to contact her husband after that weekend, he became concerned. He reached out to her friend, but the friend knew nothing about any planned trip to Maine. In fact, the friend had not heard from Lamberton at all recently, which only deepened the mystery surrounding her sudden disappearance. Lamberton's husband took the next logical step and went to Assumption College to inquire about Dr. Barker's possible knowledge of her whereabouts. It was there that he learned Barker had been away on a skiing trip in Vail, Colorado. Barker had planned to stay only for the weekend, but a bout of pneumonia left him hospitalized, and he ended up staying in Colorado for 2 weeks. This only seemed to heighten the suspicion that Lamberton may have been with him. Her husband, however, had no definitive proof and was left grappling with the uncertainty of whether his wife had vanished on her own accord or if something more sinister was at play. After Barker returned to Massachusetts, Lamberton's husband confronted him in person, seeking any information he might have about her whereabouts. Barker admitted that he was storing Lamberton's belongings in his garage, but he claimed not to know her well and offered no answers about her disappearance. He even suggested that Lamberton had likely found another romantic partner, a statement that seemed to point to the possibility that she had left of her own volition, but no one could say for sure. Lamberton's brothers eventually retrieved her belongings from Barker's garage in 1975, a full year after she disappeared, but this did little to provide clarity about her fate. None of her friends or acquaintances seemed to have any idea about her whereabouts or plans. Barker maintained his story, asserting that he knew nothing about her disappearance, but the lack of answers only left more questions in its wake. In the years following her disappearance, some members of Lamberton's family speculated that she may have chosen to leave on her own, perhaps even entering into a new relationship. Lamberton herself had reportedly mentioned the idea of starting over and finding a new life, which led some to believe that she had simply decided to disappear. However, there were significant gaps in the timeline that made such a theory hard to accept without further evidence. Despite the growing concerns, no missing persons report was filed for Lamberton at the time of her disappearance. It wasn't until 2010, 36 years later, that Lamberton was officially reported as missing. During that time, there was little to no activity under her name. Her Social Security number had not been used since 1974, and her driver's license had not been renewed. These facts further fueled the suspicion that Lamberton had intentionally vanished, but the mystery surrounding her fate continued to haunt her family and friends. In 1980, one of Lamberton's brothers finally located a close friend of hers who had not been questioned after her disappearance. This friend revealed a chilling detail. Lamberton had called her the night she spoke to her estranged husband. During that conversation, Lamberton mentioned that she planned to go to Colorado with Dr. Barker. She also told her friend that there was talk of a possible future together, even marriage. Lamberton had promised to call her friend after returning from Colorado, but that call never came. This was the last time anyone heard from her. Lamberton's family remained in the dark about her whereabouts for years. Although she had told people that she was originally from Colorado, it was revealed that she had actually come from Harper, Kansas, a detail that her estranged husband believed she was ashamed of. At the time of her disappearance, she was living on Westford Road in Worcester, Massachusetts, but it was as if she had evaporated from the face of the earth. As the years passed, the theories about what happened to Lamberton grew more speculative. Some believed she had run off with Dr. Barker. Others thought she had met a tragic fate. And a few even speculated that she may have fallen victim to foul play. But the truth remains elusive, and her case remains unsolved. Amy Billig was born on January 9, 1957, in Coconut Grove, a picturesque neighborhood in Miami. Coconut Grove, with its sun-drenched streets, palm trees, and views of the sprawling ocean, paints the picture of an idyllic, carefree place. It's the kind of place where people assume their biggest problems are fleeting. The sun never sets too early, the water's always warm, and the sky is always blue. It's easy to forget that danger can lurk just beyond the horizon, and even easier to overlook the very real threats that can be hidden in plain sight. For 17-year-old Amy, life in this vibrant community seemed to offer nothing but possibilities. It was a world of friends, school, and the thrill of a weekend rendezvous. But that all changed on March 5, 1974. That afternoon, Amy was headed home after school, her thoughts likely on the snack she'd had before meeting up with her friends. She called her father to ask for some pocket money, just a normal exchange between a teenager and her parent. Little did anyone know, this would be the last time Amy would speak to her father. After her lunch, Amy set off to her father's workplace, deciding to hitch a ride to get there. It was a decision that would haunt her family forever. She was never seen again. When Amy didn't return home that evening, her parents, Tom and Susan Billig, were immediately worried. They knew something wasn't right. Amy had always been responsible, and this sudden disappearance wasn't like her. They contacted the police, and within hours, a search was underway. The authorities scoured the areas Amy might have passed on her way to her father's office, but there was no trace of her. No sign of a struggle, no clues, no hints at all to suggest what had happened to the young girl. Days turned into a week, and the terror of her family grew deeper. It wasn't just that Amy had disappeared. It was a complete lack of evidence. Her absence was like a hole in the universe. No footprints, no cars seen, nothing to indicate her path. The investigation seemed to stall before it even started. Then suddenly, two 16-year-old brothers, Charles and Larry Glasser, contacted Amy's parents. They claimed to have kidnapped Amy and demanded a $30,000 ransom. The police acted quickly, and the brothers were arrested, but it soon became clear they were nothing more than opportunistic criminals. They hadn't kidnapped Amy. They hadn't seen her. They were just trying to exploit a tragic situation for their own gain. They were charged with extortion, but they had no answers for Amy's family. As days turned into weeks with still no answers, Amy's mother, Susan, began receiving disturbing phone calls. An unidentified man claimed that Amy was alive but enslaved. He told Susan that her daughter had become his slave. His voice was cold and detached, offering no explanation, no demands, only a horrific admission. The police tried to trace the calls, but they were made from payphones, and the mystery caller disappeared without a trace. The investigation grew more desperate with each passing day. Then, one of the few physical clues emerged. Amy's camera was discovered near a Florida highway, but the majority of the photos were overexposed. There was one photo that didn't seem to fit with the others, but it provided no concrete evidence. The mystery surrounding Amy's disappearance only deepened. Unable to stand idly by, Susan took matters into her own hands. She became her own investigator, relentless in her pursuit of the truth. For her, there was no other option. She had to know what had happened to her daughter. 12 days after Amy vanished, Susan received a tip. Someone said Amy might have been taken by a biker gang, the Outlaws, a notorious group with a history of criminal activity, including human trafficking. It was a chilling possibility, but Susan couldn't ignore it. The Outlaws had been known to travel across the country, engaging in all sorts of illicit dealings, and it seemed plausible that they had crossed paths with Amy as she was hitching her ride. Susan reached out to a former legal representative for the gang, a man who could help her get access to members who might know something. He arranged a meeting with two members of the Outlaws. The bikers, cold and calculating, denied knowing anything about Amy's disappearance. But then they offered a bone-chilling confession. They admitted that in the past, members of their gang had kidnapped young girls, selling them into slavery. The bikers didn't seem shocked or ashamed. It was just another day in their world. This revelation made Susan's heart sink. Could Amy be one of these girls? The thought was unbearable. But the bikers offered another detail that couldn't be ignored. They said that the girls were often traded like commodities, exchanged for things like motorcycles, credit cards, and other items. It was a horrifying glimpse into a dark underworld. Susan's investigation took her across the country, to places where the Outlaws were rumored to be. She traveled to Orlando, 155 miles from Coconut Grove, where she learned of a strange but important detail. A cashier at a small convenience store recognized Amy's photo and said he had seen her in the company of two bikers. He even remembered what she had bought: vegetarian soup. It wasn't just a minor detail. It was significant. Amy was a vegetarian. This was the confirmation Susan needed that her daughter might still be alive. But despite the small lead, Susan was once again left with no real answers. Months passed. Susan's search continued. Then, in January of 1976, a man named Dave, a biker who had seen Amy's picture in a newspaper, contacted Susan. He said that Amy had been with him for a while after being sold by another biker. He claimed that Amy had been passed around within the biker community. Susan's heart broke as she listened to him explain how he had bought Amy from another biker and kept her for a time before selling her to yet another gang member. To prove he was telling the truth, Dave mentioned a scar that Amy had, a scar that Susan had never shared publicly. This new revelation confirmed that, for all the horror Susan had been imagining, Amy was indeed alive at one point. Dave promised to help, even offering to find out who currently had Amy. 2 weeks later, he contacted Susan again, this time with information that could lead to her daughter's whereabouts. He told her that Amy was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It seemed like a breakthrough, but the hope that filled Susan's chest quickly turned to despair once more. When she and Dave met in Tulsa, they waited in a local bar, but Amy never showed. A fight broke out, and in the chaos, Dave was injured. The bikers dragged Susan out of the bar and put her into a taxi, telling her to leave. Once again, the search was stalled. Dave was gone. It was as if he had vanished. In the following years, Susan's quest took her to Seattle, where more people claimed to have seen Amy. They described her as very quiet and shy, a description that matched Dave's words. But still, nothing came of it. Every door seemed to close before Susan could reach the truth. In 1979, Susan received a phone call from an anonymous man who said that Amy was at a truck stop near Reno, Nevada. The caller claimed Amy needed urgent help. Susan immediately contacted the FBI, but by the time they investigated, there were no signs of Amy at the location. The trail grew colder. Years passed. The pain of uncertainty was almost too much to bear. In 1992, Susan contacted private detectives who claimed they had tracked down a man who had offered to sell a quiet, withdrawn girl. But again, the lead fizzled out and the man disappeared. In 1997, an ex-member of the Outlaws gang named Paul Branch, who was on his deathbed, allegedly confessed to killing Amy. He said that he and other members of the gang had taken Amy and that she had died soon after being kidnapped. Susan didn't trust the story. She suspected it was a ploy for money and publicity, but her heartbreak only deepened with the passing of time. For years, Susan continued to receive phone calls from a man who taunted her with claims about what he had done to her daughter. He used a payphone at first, but eventually, in 1995, he made a mistake. Instead of using a payphone, he used a mobile phone. The FBI tracked the call and identified the man as Henry Johnson Blair, a U.S. Customs officer. Blair denied any involvement with Amy's disappearance, claiming he was just an alcoholic with obsessive-compulsive disorder. But there were too many unsettling coincidences. Blair's van was the same model and color as the one seen in a photo taken from Amy's camera. Amy had also written in her diary about a man named Hank, who had promised to take her to South America. Blair's nickname was Hank, and he had traveled to South America for work. Despite all the disturbing parallels, there was no conclusive proof to tie Blair to Amy's kidnapping. In the end, the truth about what happened to Amy remains unknown. Was she taken by the bikers? Was Blair responsible for her disappearance? We may never know. But what's certain is that Susan Billig never gave up. She searched for her daughter until the very end, even after suffering a heart attack. She passed away in 2005, still holding on to the hope that one day the truth would emerge. The case of Amy Billig remains unsolved, a heartbreaking mystery that continues to haunt those who knew her. Despite the years, the twists, and the dead ends, Susan's love for her daughter never wavered to the unwavering bond between a mother and her child, a bond that, even in the face of overwhelming uncertainty, never truly dies. In the town of Spooner, Wisconsin, a disturbing mystery lingers around the case of Sarah Bushland, a vibrant 15-year-old who vanished without a trace on April 3, 1996. Her disappearance has haunted the community, baffled investigators, and left her family grasping for answers. It was the last school day before spring break, and Sarah seemed to be in high spirits. Recently ungrounded, she left her family's Spring Lake home and joined her friend to walk to Spooner High School. During the day, she met up with her boyfriend, Travis Lane, for lunch. Afterward, he dropped her back at school, where she continued her classes. Sarah initially planned to head to a friend's home after school and return later for an evening event. However, by day's end, she changed her mind and decided to go home first. Unable to find anyone to give her a ride, Sarah took the school bus as usual. During the 40-minute bus ride, some students noted a dark-colored pickup truck trailing the bus. The truck was recognizable. It belonged to a man Sarah had once dated. When Sarah stepped off the bus at the end of her gravel driveway, several witnesses saw her approach the truck, appearing familiar with the driver. It's unclear whether Sarah entered the truck or just spoke with the driver, but it was the last time anyone saw her. Sarah's stepbrother, David, was home alone at that time, as Sarah's mother, Marie, was out of town for a funeral, planning to stay overnight in Chippewa Falls. Her stepfather, Jim Lambert, was visiting friends in Minnesota. David noticed that Sarah didn't come home when expected and called his father at 4:37 p.m. to inform him. Since Sarah had initially planned to visit a friend after school, nobody was immediately concerned about her absence. Jim then called Marie, and she promptly returned to Spooner. Arriving home at 6:20 p.m., Marie began reaching out to Sarah's friends, hoping to find her whereabouts, but no one had seen her since school let out. Around 8 p.m., Marie started driving to places Sarah might be, including the friend's house she'd visited that morning and Travis's apartment. Travis confirmed they had lunch together, but hadn't seen her after dropping her back off at school. The night was restless as Marie lay awake, filled with worry and dread over her missing daughter. Jim returned from Minnesota the next day, and the couple went to the Spooner Police Department to report Sarah missing. Surprisingly, authorities showed little urgency, seemingly assuming Sarah had run away. The case garnered no media attention, and many of Sarah's classmates didn't even know she was missing until 2 weeks later. Oddly, Marie hadn't informed Sarah's father, Mike Bushland, of her disappearance. He only learned about it days later from his ex-mother-in-law. Unlike local authorities, Mike was convinced Sarah hadn't simply run away. She had left all her belongings behind, including clothes, makeup, and personal items, indications, he felt, that she hadn't planned on going anywhere for long. Sarah had only recently moved to Wisconsin in December 1994, previously living with her father and sister, Leslie, in Colorado. The sisters were very close, separated by just 18 months in age. When their parents divorced in 1984, they maintained joint custody, but both girls chose to move with Mike to Colorado when he relocated there in 1990. During their teenage years, the sisters occasionally acted out. Leslie dabbled in shoplifting for the thrill, though she never took anything of value. Sarah eventually followed suit, but her actions were less discreet. She was caught in November 1994 and arrested, which deeply upset Mike, who then grounded her. In anger, Sarah decided she wanted to live with her mother and stepfather in Wisconsin, and by December, she'd made the move. Sarah's new home in Wisconsin presented both freedom and challenges. Jim and Marie Lambert owned a sprawling 65-acre property near Spring Lake. Their home had burned down in 1990, so they converted a 2-story garage into a living space where Sarah shared quarters with 2 stepbrothers. Jim and Marie were often absent, and Sarah's new life offered minimal supervision but little privacy, as her room lacked a door and doubled as Jim's office. Although she adjusted well and made friends, she began associating with older teens, including her 21-year-old boyfriend, Travis, which her parents disapproved of. Sometime in March 1996, Jim found Sarah's diary, and after reading passages he found troubling, he grounded her. Sarah resented the punishment and seemed to long for the stability she'd once had with her father. Shortly before she disappeared, she even told her grandmother that she was considering returning to Colorado. On the day of her disappearance, Sarah mentioned to a friend that she was anxious to get home, fearing her stepfather might discover her diary. This seemed odd, as Jim was out of town for an overnight trip, though it's possible she worried her stepbrothers might find it. Despite her family's belief that she hadn't run away, the police latched onto this theory, conducting little investigation. Mike grew increasingly frustrated, noting that nobody from the sheriff's office reached out to him until a year after she went missing. It was clear they hadn't conducted a thorough investigation. In July 1999, authorities performed their first search of the Lambert property, examining a nearby trash dump but found nothing related to Sarah. In August 2000, a second search involved dragging Spring Lake and combing through the land with a search warrant, but again no evidence surfaced. The dark-colored truck seen at Sarah's driveway remained a significant mystery. Some witnesses thought it resembled a vehicle owned by Sarah's boyfriend's father, while others connected it to a man named Steve, though no one by that name was known to Sarah. Investigators seemed less focused on the truck as time went on, hinting that they suspected something had happened to Sarah at her own home. In 2013, investigators re-examined the Lambert property. Over 2 days, they scoured the land with 70 officers and cadaver dogs. Yet again, found no new leads. Both Jim and Marie passed away in 2017, and shortly after Jim's death, law enforcement conducted a 4th search, yielding no answers. The investigation's lack of progress has led Sarah's family to reluctantly accept that foul play is likely involved. Her father and sister, Leslie, are now resigned to the possibility that Sarah may not be alive, but have never given up hope for answers. Leslie continues to work tirelessly to keep Sarah's case alive in the hope that they may one day uncover the truth. Sarah Bushland was 5 feet tall, with blonde hair and blue eyes. Weighing around 104 pounds a day she vanished. She wore blue jeans, a Tweety Bird t-shirt, a blue jacket, and black sneakers. She also wore silver rings, including her Spooner High School class ring. If you have any information about Sarah's disappearance, please contact the Washburn County Sheriff's Office at 715-468-4700. Lili Aembo's story began on November 16, 1983, in San Francisco, California. Her family life was shaped early on when her parents relocated to Florida. Sadly, her father left soon after, filing for divorce and severing all ties. Raised solely by her mother, Luce Ellie, Lili was surrounded by an atmosphere of resilience. Luce worked tirelessly, selling flowers at intersections and taking on odd jobs to provide a stable, loving environment. She was devoted to Lili, And despite the hardships, she ensured her daughter never felt unloved or neglected. From a young age, Lily's family and friends saw her as a deeply caring and sweet girl with a love for nature. She spent much of her time outdoors, enjoying flowers and trees and watching animals. Luce fondly remembered how Lily would help ants on their path, fascinated by their tiny worlds. This early passion for nature translated into Lily's artistic expression, often through unique outfits and homemade jewelry. Proud of her Mexican heritage, Lily brought warmth and smiles to people around her with her wit and charm. She was compassionate, pure-hearted, and fiercely loyal to those she believed needed help. Always on the side of the disadvantaged, she felt a deep sense of justice even as a young girl. Lily attended Shenandoah Elementary School and Ponce de Leon Middle School, where she was an enthusiastic student with a love for learning. Her interests expanded as she grew, developing a love for music and reading. She kept a journal from a young age, recording her thoughts and dreams. But life took a turn when, at 14, her mother moved to Hollywood, Florida, to open a flower shop. The relocation wasn't easy for Lily, who missed her Miami friends and felt isolated in the new area. She resisted making new friends, her rebellious streak starting to show. Around this time, Lily began experimenting with alcohol and marijuana. Diagnosed with depression, she struggled to adjust, and her grades and attendance suffered. By 16, Lily's behavior had grown increasingly difficult for her mother to manage. She dropped out of high school and drifted between her mother's home and the streets, squatting in abandoned buildings or sleeping on the beach with her friend Kelly. Her friend sensed that Lily wanted to break free from this lifestyle, but addiction had a firm grip on her. At age 20, her life took another detour when she met a man named David Lamassive. The relationship was tumultuous, marked by drug use and emotional strain. Despite Luce's attempts to help, Lily became deeply involved with heroin, and by 2004, she and David were also using crack cocaine. Her friends watched her cycle through brief periods of sobriety, only to fall back into addiction, her once bright spirit dimmed by the haze of drugs. In January 2006, Lily discovered she was pregnant, and this news marked a turning point. Determined to turn her life around, she distanced herself from drugs, committed to Buddhism, and earned her GED. Her son was born in September of that year, and she fell in love with him entirely. She moved into a trailer and set out to build a better life for them. But shortly after, Christian Pacheco, an old friend from her days on the street, resurfaced and pursued her romantically. The two moved in together, becoming engaged 4 months after her son's birth. Yet the relationship soon revealed itself to be far from ideal. Christian's behavior became increasingly problematic, and Lily's mother, Luce, grew worried as she saw Lily's life spiraling again. Friends witnessed the couple arguing frequently, and Christian allegedly coerced Lily into using drugs to maintain control over her. In February 2007, the police responded to a 911 call from their condo, where Lily reported abuse. Child Protective Services took her son, and Lily was told she could regain custody only if she completed drug rehab. Heartbroken, she checked into a treatment center, determined to make it through. But by May 29, 2007, after her release from rehab, Lily's resolve was waning. Her friend Alicia saw her shortly afterward and noted how downcast she was, blaming Christian for her troubles. Then, on June 1, 2007, Lily vanished. Christian claimed she left their condo in the middle of the night, taking only bungee cords with her, yet he waited 36 hours to report her missing. He later told Luce that Lily might have ended up at a crack house, but nothing was ever confirmed. Luce was devastated, desperate to find her daughter. She started searching every day, from rundown crack houses to the roughest areas in Miami. Janet Forte, Lily's best friend, joined her in this relentless search. Together, they felt that Lily's case wasn't a priority for the authorities. Captain Jana Bollinger-Heller, head of the Miami-Dade Domestic Crimes Bureau, stated that hundreds of missing person reports come in monthly, and most cases are resolved within the year. But as time dragged on, Lily's case remained cold. Determined not to let her daughter's story fade away, Luce and Janet kept pushing for answers. They created a Facebook page to share Lily's story and a blog to keep public interest alive. A journalist from the Miami New Times picked up the story, drawing attention to the case and prompting the Miami-Dade police to take another look. Private investigators, moved by the family's plight, offered to work pro bono, determined to uncover what happened. As investigators reviewed the case, they found inconsistencies in Christian's story. He failed a polygraph test, further raising suspicions. He claimed Lili left on her own, but her family and friends couldn't believe she'd disappear without a trace. Private investigator Joe Carrillo began looking into possible leads, including an abandoned property where Lili's body was rumored to be hidden, yet nothing was found. The sighting reports led nowhere, and the Miami police seemed reluctant to follow up on some tips. Years passed, and Lili's case grew colder. But Luce and Janet refused to let her memory fade. They organized protests, raised awareness online, and continued questioning authorities. Detective Hoadley of the Miami-Dade Police eventually took a renewed interest in the case, doubting Christian's account. Hoadley discovered that witnesses who claimed to have seen Lili admitted to fabricating their stories at Christian's request. Despite these disturbing revelations, the investigation failed to yield any solid evidence. By 2011, the case had hit a standstill. Christian's arrest history, including charges of drug possession and violence, made him a person of interest, but without conclusive proof, he was never formally charged. Luce, still without answers, had to find a way to move forward for her grandson's sake. The search for Lili continued, but hope was fading. Despite all her efforts, Luce had to come to terms with the grim reality that her daughter might never be found. In the absence of justice and with no body or final proof of what happened, Lili Aembo's story remains a haunting mystery. Her family, especially her mother and Janet, hold on to hope that one day they might know the truth. On the morning of September 20th, 2014, the tranquil town of North Augusta, South Carolina, found itself at the center of a perplexing mystery: the sudden disappearance of 37-year-old Tammy Kingry. A devoted mother of 3 and a dedicated nurse, Tammy's life appeared stable and fulfilling. Yet, beneath the surface lay cracks that would soon unravel a story of anguish, confusion, and unanswered questions. Tammy had started her day like any other, getting ready for her shift at NHC Healthcare, where she had worked for several years. She was known for her compassion and dedication to her patients, traits that made her a respected member of the nursing staff. However, as the day progressed, it became clear that something was amiss. Colleagues noted her agitation, an unusual state for someone who typically managed the demands of her job with grace. She seemed preoccupied and anxious, frequently checking her blood pressure, which was concerningly high. By mid-morning, the anxiety became overwhelming, leading Tammy to make an unexpected call to her husband, Park. "I need you to come get me," she said, her voice laced with distress. She didn't feel well enough to drive home, and the concern in her tone was palpable. Park hurried to the healthcare facility, where he found her in a state of unease. He reassured her and took her home, hoping that some rest would help alleviate her discomfort. Once they arrived, Tammy changed into her pajamas and lay down in bed, seeking solace from the world. Park, understanding her need for quiet, took their 2 younger sons out to run errands, leaving her to recuperate. He thought little of it at the time, believing that a few hours of peace would restore her. However, when Park returned home with the boys, he was met with an unsettling scene. The house was locked, and inside, he discovered a handwritten note from Tammy. It read, "Gone for a walk. Be back soon. Love you." Though the note was in her familiar handwriting, it struck him as strange. Tammy had never been one to take long walks, especially not in their neighborhood, which was known for its lack of pedestrian-friendly pathways. More alarming was the fact that she had left behind her purse, phone, money, and keys, items she would never willingly part with. Park's heart raced with worry. The note felt vaguely final, as if she were preparing for a longer absence than just a brief stroll. He called out for her, searching the house and the yard, but received no answer. As the minutes turned into hours, a gnawing anxiety took hold, prompting him to call the police around 2 p.m. The police response was swift. Local authorities and volunteers began a comprehensive search of the area, scouring the woods nearby and searching for any sign of Tammy. They utilized search dogs to track her scent, but no trace could be found. As the hours stretched into days, the once serene community was plunged into a state of fear and uncertainty. Investigators began to piece together a profile of Tammy's life, exploring her relationships, mental health, and any potential stressors. What they uncovered painted a more complicated picture than what appeared on the surface. Tammy's marriage to Park had become strained over the years. According to her mother, the couple had grown distant and had even contemplated divorce, with their 3 children acting as the glue that held them together. In addition to marital strife, Tammy was battling depression, a condition that she had been open about to friends and family. She was on medication and had confided in her sisters about her struggles with emotional distress and insomnia. The toll of her mental health battle had affected her work, leading to mischief and erratic behavior. There were whispers of extramarital affairs, which added another layer of complexity and tension to her already fraught relationship with Park. Despite these challenges, Park was genuinely concerned for his wife. On the day of her disappearance, he was verified to have been at several stores running errands with their sons, caught on multiple surveillance cameras. He even passed a lie detector test, but that did little to quell the murmurs and suspicions circulating within the community. Speculation arose that he might have been involved in her disappearance, a common narrative that surfaces in many missing persons cases. As detectives worked tirelessly, they uncovered text messages between Tammy and 2 local men. However, neither man appeared connected to her disappearance. There were also conflicting reports regarding a motorcycle that Tammy's daughter claimed to have seen shortly after her mother went missing. The little girl had been playing at a friend's house nearby and insisted that the rider looked just like her mom. This sighting fueled speculation about a potential abduction or voluntary disappearance. Investigators explored every avenue, considering the possibility that Tammy had left voluntarily, seeking to escape the pressures of her life. As the search continued, an unsettling discovery was made in the woods near the Kingry home. A makeshift shack was found, emanating a foul odor that led searchers to believe something sinister might be at play. Inside, they discovered gloves, sponges, and the decaying remains of a dog. Some volunteers speculated that this could have been an attempt to mislead search parties, but police determined it had no connection to Tammy's case. As weeks turned into months, the investigation continued to stall. The lack of evidence or credible leads weighed heavily on the hearts of Tammy's family and friends, who were desperate for answers. Park found himself caught in a whirlwind of grief, guilt, and financial strain. His life had been upended, and he struggled to maintain stability for their children amid the chaos. Initially, he had offered a reward for information leading to Tammy's whereabouts, but as time passed and financial burdens mounted, he was forced to withdraw it. Rumors continued to circulate in the community, with some speculating that Tammy may have chosen to start anew, escaping the weight of her mental health struggles and marital difficulties. For many, the thought of her voluntarily abandoning her family felt impossible. Yet in the depths of despair, some can make choices that defy logic. Throughout this tumultuous period, Park oscillated between hope and despair, often reflecting on their life together. He recalled the moments of joy, the laughter shared during family dinners, and the dreams they had for their children. Yet, the shadow of her disappearance loomed large, and he often grappled with fears that he would never see her again. As months turned to years, the community remained vigilant, holding on to the hope that Tammy would one day return. Vigil gatherings were organized, and her story was shared widely, bringing attention to the issues of mental health and the impact of familial stress. Many in the area found themselves drawn to the case, wanting to help bring closure to the Kingry family. Tammy's family faced an agonizing reality, haunted by memories of her and the unanswered questions that lingered in the air. They were left with a sense of helplessness, unable to find solace or closure in a situation that defied understanding. The hope that one day they would discover the truth remained a flicker in their hearts, even as time continued to pass. As the anniversary of her disappearance approached, Park organized a small memorial to honor Tammy's memory. Friends and family gathered to share stories, remember the good times, and acknowledge the pain of her absence. The event served as a reminder of the love they once shared, and the family vowed to continue searching for answers, no matter how long it took. Nearly a decade has now passed since Tammy Kingry vanished. The case remains unsolved, and the heart-wrenching questions persist. Where did she go? Did she seek a new life, or did something more sinister occur? The truth remains elusive, cloaked in a shroud of uncertainty. As the community continues to reflect on Tammy's story, they are reminded of the importance of mental health awareness, compassion, and the need for open conversations about struggles that so many face in silence. The hope for closure lingers, a testament to the enduring love of a family searching for answers and a reminder of the complexities of life. While the mystery of Tammy Kingry's disappearance may never be fully resolved, her story serves as a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the hidden battles that many endure. The search for the truth continues, and with it, the hope that one day her family will find peace and understanding in a world that has been forever altered by her absence. On the crisp morning of November 1st, 1986, the quiet community of Long Beach, New York, was jolted into horror when 15-year-old Heim Weiss was discovered brutally murdered in his dorm room at a yeshiva. As an Orthodox Jew attending this religious institution, Heim was not only a student, but also a beloved member of a close-knit community centered around traditional Jewish teachings. His tragic death sent shockwaves through this normally peaceful environment, transforming it from a place of learning into a haunting crime scene. It was early, around 7:50 a.m., when a dorm counselor knocked on Heim's door after he failed to appear for Sabbath services. Receiving no response, the counselor opened the door, only to be confronted with a gruesome sight that would forever change the lives of those involved. Heim lay on the floor of his room, still clad in his pajamas. The violence of his murder was evident. He had been bludgeoned to death, likely while asleep. Detectives later determined that a heavy tool, possibly the back of a hammer, had been used to crush the back of his skull with 2 devastating blows. The brutality of the attack suggested that Heim had not only been caught off guard, but had also likely been unconscious when the assault began. As police arrived, the scene was both shocking and puzzling. There were no signs of a struggle. The room was undisturbed, with personal belongings intact. This suggested a chilling familiarity between the victim and his killer. A window was found open despite the cold autumn air, which led investigators to theorize that this could have been a point of entry or exit for the murderer. The investigators believed that after the attack, Heim's body had been moved to the floor, aligning with Orthodox customs that dictate the deceased must be at the lowest point in the room. Intriguingly, a rabbi was allowed to place a memorial candle in Heim's room before it was sealed off as a crime scene. However, just 2 days later, a second candle appeared mysteriously, leading police to suspect that it may have been lit by the killer. This detail deepened the already murky waters of the investigation, raising questions about the perpetrator's connection to the community and to Heim himself. Detectives quickly began to investigate Heim's life, searching for clues that might reveal why someone would commit such an unthinkable act against a seemingly well-liked and easygoing teenager. Friends and faculty described him as a diligent student, one who got along with everyone and was at the top of his class. The principal of the yeshiva had even reached out to Heim's parents shortly before his death for a meeting, the purpose of which remained unknown and was never disclosed to Heim's family. This secretive nature only fueled speculation about the circumstances surrounding his murder. On the night of October 31st, Heim had attended classes and participated in evening services, as was customary for students. He was last seen around 12:30 a.m. by classmates in the hallway, reading quietly, preparing for the Sabbath that was about to begin. The school atmosphere, normally filled with camaraderie and devotion, was now overshadowed by a sense of fear and unease. The police conducted interviews with over 140 students and faculty members in the days following the discovery of Heim's body. However, the cultural norms of the Orthodox community presented significant challenges. Many individuals were reluctant to speak openly about what they might know, adhering to the belief that incriminating someone could lead to severe repercussions within their close-knit environment. As a result, investigators faced a wall of silence that hindered their efforts to piece together a timeline of events leading up to the murder. Detective Don Daly, one of the lead investigators, noted the difficulty in gathering information. "We were dealing with a Saturday, the Sabbath, when many of the students were unwilling to communicate with us," he recalled. They were not able to write down their statements, and there was a palpable fear among them to come forward. Despite these challenges, detectives focused on potential leads. They investigated a janitor and a mentally unstable faculty member, but both were cleared as suspects. The possibility of a Halloween thrill-seeker or an anti-Semitic perpetrator was also explored. Yet the school had never experienced such issues previously, adding to the bafflement of investigators. As the investigation dragged on, it became increasingly clear that Heim was one of only 2 students at the yeshiva without a roommate. This unique circumstance raised suspicions that the killer had been aware of this fact, enabling them to act without fear of interruption. The layout of the building, coupled with the culture of silence surrounding the Orthodox community, made the task of identifying a suspect nearly impossible. For months, more than 25 detectives were assigned to the case, but progress was slow. In an effort to encourage communication, a mobile unit was established by the school to welcome information from students and faculty, but this initiative yielded little success. Attempts to administer polygraph tests to around 40 students were made, aiming to elicit information, but again, no new leads emerged. The investigation eventually produced a single strand of hair found in Heim's room, which did not belong to him. Detectives were apprehensive about testing the sample for DNA without a suspect, fearing that they might ruin the evidence. This uncertainty only compounded the frustrations of law enforcement and the Weiss family, who were left grappling with their grief in the absence of justice. In the early hours of November 1st, a jogger reported seeing a young man walking a few blocks away from the school around dawn. This sighting was deemed unusual, as it was rare for anyone to be out at that hour unless exercising or walking a dog. Despite extensive efforts, attempts to identify this individual were unsuccessful, leaving another thread of the investigation unresolved. As the years passed, the case grew cold, but the memory of Heim Weiss remained alive in the hearts of his family, friends, and community. His parents, devastated by the loss of their son, fought to keep the memory of Heim's spirit alive, advocating for justice and remembrance in any way they could. They believed that someone somewhere held the key to solving the mystery of their son's murder. In 2013, the case was reopened, and a renewed push for information led to a $25,000 reward being offered for any details that might lead to an arrest. Investigators hoped that time would inspire someone with knowledge of the events surrounding Heim's death to come forward, but silence persisted. Decades after the tragedy, the pain of loss lingered, compounded by the frustration of unanswered questions. As the 40th anniversary of Heim's murder approached, the community reflected on the tragedy that had unfolded in their midst. Memorials were held in his honor, with family and friends gathering to remember his life and the vibrant young man he had been. They shared stories, laughter, and tears, seeking solace in the shared memories of a boy whose potential had been tragically cut short. Though nearly 40 years have passed, the question lingers: who killed Heim Weiss and why? On the night of March 2, 1998, the serene community of Albany, New York, was thrust into turmoil with the inexplicable disappearance of 19-year-old Suzanne Lyall. A sophomore at the State University of New York at Albany, Suzanne was known for her intellect, ambition, and close-knit relationships with her family and friends. With long reddish-brown hair and striking blue eyes, she was a bright and promising student studying computer science, a field she was deeply passionate about. Suzanne was more than just a typical college student. She was part of a larger digital revolution, spending much of her time exploring the emerging online world through chat rooms and forums, where she connected with others who shared her interest in technology and computers. As the youngest child in her family, Suzanne had a supportive upbringing, with parents Doug and Mary Lyall actively involved in her life. They maintained a routine of speaking to her nearly every day, fostering a strong bond that would make her sudden disappearance all the more alarming. On that fateful day, March 2nd, Suzanne followed her normal routine. She attended classes, took a midterm exam, and worked her evening shift at Babbage's, a software retailer located in Crossgates Mall. The shift ended at 9 p.m., and Suzanne boarded a Capital District Transportation Authority bus to return to her dorm. Witnesses confirmed that she disembarked the bus at Collins Circle around 9:45 p.m., just a short walk away from her residence in the Colonial Quad. This moment marked the last confirmed sighting of Suzanne Lyall. The following morning, a sense of unease settled over her loved ones. When Suzanne failed to call or email her boyfriend, Richard Condon, as she routinely did, he grew concerned. Unable to reach her, Richard contacted her parents, Doug and Mary. Realizing that something was not right, they promptly reported Suzanne missing to the campus police. Initially, the authorities were hesitant to treat the situation as an abduction, assuming she may have taken a spontaneous trip without informing anyone, a common occurrence for college students. However, the Lyalls knew their daughter well. This was not typical behavior for Suzanne, who was diligent about keeping her loved ones informed. The day after her disappearance on March 4th, campus police, New York State Police, and countless volunteers sprang into action to locate her. Their search efforts were extensive, combing through the campus and surrounding areas, yet they found no immediate clues that could lead them to Suzanne. As the investigation progressed, authorities discovered that Suzanne had indeed gotten off the bus and had not been seen since. The search expanded, but time was of the essence, and the critical first few days yielded minimal evidence. One key piece of evidence emerged. A name tag belonging to Susan was discovered near the Collins Circle bus stop, pulled from a shallow puddle. This discovery heightened concerns and fueled speculation about her whereabouts. The police began piecing together Suzanne's last known movements. They scrutinized her daily routine and delved into her online activities. Then, a crucial break in the case occurred. Suzanne's debit card had been used at a convenience store ATM nearby at around 4 p.m. on March 3rd, the day after her disappearance. A transaction of $20 had been made, suggesting that someone with access to her PIN had withdrawn the cash. However, surveillance footage from the store did not capture the face of the person who made the withdrawal, as the cameras were not focused on the ATM, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. Adding to the complexity of the investigation were the conflicting accounts from Suzanne's friends and acquaintances. Some reported that she had mentioned feeling watched in the days leading up to her disappearance. Others noted a sense of distraction about her, although none indicated that she was in immediate danger. This lack of clarity complicated the search for potential suspects. Among those scrutinized was Richard Condon, her boyfriend. Initially, Richard was cooperative with police, but as the investigation progressed, he began to refuse further cooperation, including a polygraph test. His behavior raised suspicions, especially given that he had a verified alibi for the night of Suzanne's disappearance. Despite this, his change in demeanor prompted investigators to dig deeper into his background and relationship with Suzanne. Questions lingered. Did he know more than he was letting on? Could he have played a role in her vanishing? The absence of physical evidence, eyewitnesses, and definitive leads created an atmosphere of uncertainty. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the search for Susan transitioned from an active investigation to a more methodical review of the evidence. The New York State Police took over the case, applying their resources and expertise. Yet the mystery of Suzanne Lyall's disappearance remained unsolved. Various theories emerged regarding her fate. Some believed she had been abducted after getting off the bus, perhaps by someone who had been observing her and knew her routine. The discovery of her name tag near the bus stop added a layer of support to this theory. Richard Condon continued to remain a person of interest, with his refusal to cooperate leading to speculation that he could have lured Susan away and harmed her. However, his involvement was complicated by the fact that he had been the one to alert her parents about her disappearance, creating a tangled web of possibilities. A more sinister theory involved the notorious serial killer Israel Keyes, known for his meticulous planning and random victim selection. Investigators discovered that Suzanne's name was on a list of missing persons found on Keyes' computer. However, linking Keyes to her case proved difficult, as there was no concrete evidence placing him in Albany at the time of her disappearance. In the wake of their daughter's disappearance, Doug and Mary Lyall transformed their grief into advocacy. They founded the Center for Hope, an organization aimed at supporting families of missing persons and advocating for changes in how these cases are handled. Their tireless efforts led to significant legislative changes, including the signing of the PROTECT Act in 2003, which encompassed provisions for Suzanne's Law. This law aimed to ensure that missing college students receive the same level of attention and resources as younger children, closing a gap that had long existed in the system. Despite the passage of time, the investigation into Suzanne's disappearance remains open. The New York State Police continue to follow leads, and the case has garnered media attention, appearing on several true crime shows, which has helped to maintain public interest. Annual vigils in Suzanne's memory draw significant community support, highlighting the impact her case has had on Albany and beyond. If you have any information regarding Suzanne's disappearance, no matter how small, please reach out to the authorities. The search for answers continues, and every piece of information could be vital in bringing closure to this heartbreaking case. We're diving into one of Portland, Oregon's most chilling mysteries: the disappearance of the Martin family from the Columbia River Gorge in 1958. Known as one of the largest missing person searches in Oregon history, this case has haunted investigators and the public for over half a century. The Martin family consisted of Ken Martin, born on September 10, 1904, his wife, Barbara, born in February 1910, and their 4 children: Donald, age 28, and 3 daughters, Barbie, 14, Virginia, 13, and Susan, 11. The Martins were an integral part of their Portland community, known for their festive Christmas decorations and organizing summer talent shows and parades. This was the kind of family everyone admired, a model of unity and warmth. December 7, 1958, was a Sunday, and Ken Martin declined a dinner invitation from family friends, stating they had other plans. According to neighbors, the family left their home around 1:30 or 2 p.m. in their 1954 cream and red Ford Country Squire. The plan was a day trip to the Columbia River Gorge to gather Christmas greenery. Their route remains a mystery, with only scattered sightings placing them in various spots. Clara York, a waitress at the Paradise Snack Bar in Hood River, initially reported seeing the family between 4 and 4:30 p.m., though she later revised this to 2 p.m., citing that she remembered turning on the floodlights as dusk set in after they left. More sightings followed. Witnesses reported seeing the Martin family car parked under the Bridge of the Gods at dusk, where 2 unidentified men were seen speaking to the family. After this encounter, the Martins were never seen alive again, setting off alarm bells across the state the following day when Ken failed to report to work and the girls didn't attend school. Friends and family quickly notified authorities, launching one of the most massive manhunts in Oregon history. The Multnomah and Hood River County Police led a tireless search, interviewing witnesses, scouring riverbanks, and searching the Columbia River, yet no substantial leads were found. Amateur detective Donald D. Bain discovered tire tracks leading over a cliff in the Dallas area, accompanied by cream-colored paint chips that matched the Martin station wagon. Despite Bain's insistence, police hesitated to explore the area with divers due to safety concerns. However, some divers believed the spot could yield clues to the family's fate. Months later, on May 1, 1959, a drilling rig anchor latched onto a heavy object in the river near the Dalles. The next day, 2 bodies floated to the surface, 13-year-old Virginia and 11-year-old Susan. Both girls showed signs of drowning, though one autopsy technician reportedly noted what appeared to be bullet wounds in their skulls. Oddly, no official police report or autopsy mentioned these injuries, leaving open the possibility that they were either an oversight or intentionally suppressed. Adding to the mystery, metal traces were found on Susan's clothing, sparking questions about a potential connection to an aluminum smelting plant near the drilling site. Strangely, the girls' urns went unclaimed for over a decade before being retrieved by an unknown individual. Meanwhile, suspicion fell on the Martin's son, Donald. Living in New York at the time, he hadn't traveled to Oregon to assist in the search, raising eyebrows. He later inherited the family's estate, valued at approximately $36,000, a substantial sum in today's terms. Despite his inheritance, Donald maintained a troubled relationship with his family. Detective Walter Graven, a tireless investigator on the case, discovered that Donald had previously been fired from a Portland department store for theft. Graven began questioning Donald's involvement and whether he had been present on the fateful day. During his investigation, Graven uncovered other strange leads. A .38 caliber pistol was found near the Cascade locks, reportedly covered in blood and bearing a spent bullet, yet it was oddly returned to the person who found it rather than kept as evidence. Later examination revealed the gun matched one Donald allegedly stole years earlier. Graven's investigation was hindered by local law enforcement and even met outright hostility. When he sought permission to search deeper into potential foul play, Sheriff Francis Lambert reportedly destroyed Graven's report before his eyes, insisting the case was closed. Why Lambert acted so dismissively remains unclear, though rumors circulated that the sheriff had personal ties to Clifford Slim Bennett, a Portland bootlegger who allegedly provided shelter to two ex-cons seen with the Martins on the day they vanished. One of the more unsettling theories Graven considered involved Barbie, the Martins' 14-year-old daughter. Some speculated that she may have been pregnant, potentially creating family conflict. Barbie had seen a doctor that fall, unusual since she usually visited a family pediatrician. Graven speculated that the Martins' trip might have been a confrontation with someone who was involved with Barbie, a possibility that has fueled decades of speculation about the family's last day. Years after the disappearance, Donald sent Graven a cryptic Christmas card in French reading, "And they came down from the hills, and they were no longer afraid," accompanied by a sketch resembling his family and a cliff in the background. The sketch and message have only deepened the mystery, with interpretations ranging from guilt to coded confession. This case remains as perplexing today as it was in 1958. Despite exhaustive investigations, modern resources, and enduring public fascination, the Martins' ultimate fate is unknown. What drove this loving family to their doom? Was it an accident, a tragic misunderstanding, or something far darker? On Halloween night in 1998, the town of Midland, Ontario, was rocked by the mysterious disappearance of 18-year-old Jake Just. Known for his friendly personality and adventurous spirit, Jake was preparing to embark on a promising future as he headed to college. However, that fateful night, he vanished without a trace, leaving behind a perplexing mystery that has haunted the community for over 2 decades. Midland, a picturesque town nestled on the shores of Georgian Bay, transforms into a vibrant hub of activity every Halloween. Streets fill with costumed revelers, and the air buzzes with excitement from parties and celebrations. On October 30th, 1998, Jake attended a local party with friends, unaware that it would be the last time anyone would see him. The gathering was typical of teenage festivities, featuring music, games, and for some, excessive drinking. Witnesses reported that Jake was in high spirits, even engaging in reckless antics like breaking a beer bottle over his head, resulting in a minor injury. Despite his intoxication, he continued to enjoy the night. As the clock approached midnight, Jake decided to take a shortcut home through Sunnyside Woods, a dense and dark area that offered a quicker route. His friend, concerned about the woods, opted for the well-lit path and agreed to meet Jake on the other side. However, when his friend arrived at the designated meeting spot, Jake was nowhere to be found. By morning, worry began to mount. Jake had not returned home, and his mother, Debbie, quickly learned about the events of the previous night from his friends. She reported him missing to the Midland police, who promptly launched a search focused on the woods where he was last seen. Volunteers, friends, and neighbors joined the search, combing through the challenging terrain of thick underbrush and marshy areas. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging flew overhead, while divers scoured nearby waters. However, after days of exhaustive searching, no trace of Jake was found. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Investigators interviewed attendees from the party, but conflicting accounts added to the confusion. Some mentioned seeing Jake engaged in a heated argument, while others claimed he was followed by an unknown figure as he entered the woods. These discrepancies deepened the mystery surrounding his disappearance. The initial search for Jake lasted 8 days, but yielded no results. The police continued their investigation, interviewing around 200 witnesses to piece together the events of that night. Despite their efforts, no definitive leads emerged. Among those questioned were individuals Jake had reportedly argued with at the party, but investigators found no evidence linking them to his disappearance. Debbie remained relentless in her quest for answers, often receiving tips from people claiming to know what happened to her son. Each time, she held on to hope, passing the information along to the police. Unfortunately, none of these leads resulted in breakthroughs, and the case was eventually handed over to the Ontario Provincial Police for further investigation. Over the years, several theories have emerged regarding Jake's disappearance. One prominent theory suggests that he fell victim to a drunken accident, losing his way in the woods and stumbling into a swampy area. However, investigators found no evidence to support this idea, and the densely populated town raised questions about how he could have wandered off without being seen. Another theory posits that Jake was abducted shortly after entering the woods. Rumors circulated about suspicious individuals in the area that night, and some suggested he may have followed someone to a nearby strip club, only to encounter the wrong crowd. Yet, like the other theories, there was no evidence to substantiate these claims. A more sinister idea emerged when a Reddit user claimed to have heard a confession from a man who admitted to beating someone to death near the woods where Jake disappeared. This version of events suggested that Jake had fled after being chased from the party and was seeking help when he was tragically attacked. However, no concrete evidence ever surfaced to support this chilling account. Debbie remained skeptical of the foul play theories, believing in her son's ability to defend himself, having practiced karate since childhood. The community shared her heartache and confusion, with many hoping for new evidence that might bring closure to the case. Interestingly, some psychics have offered their insights into Jake's fate over the years. One claimed he made it out of the woods only to be struck by a car and hidden by a panicked driver. Another suggested his body was buried near the shores of Georgian Bay. While these theories added intrigue to the story, they did not lead to significant discoveries. Despite the lack of concrete leads, the investigation into Jake's disappearance remains open, with the Ontario Provincial Police committed to solving the case. A $50,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction still stands, and authorities encourage anyone with credible information to come forward. Midland has been deeply affected by Jake's disappearance. Annual vigils honor his memory and keep the case in the public eye, while friends and family continue to seek answers. Debbie, driven by her determination, speaks at public events and utilizes social media to ensure Jake's story remains alive. What truly happened to Jake just on that fateful Halloween night in 1998? If you have any information, no matter how small, please contact the authorities. In the town of State College, Pennsylvania, the air was thick with uncertainty as May 2014 approached. Jennifer Cale's shadow, a 48-year-old mother of 3, found herself at a pivotal moment in her life. After nearly 3 decades of marriage, her husband, Sean, had filed for divorce, plunging Jennifer into a whirlwind of emotions and chaos. She had always been the one to bring joy and light into the lives of those around her, but now she was struggling to find her footing amidst the turmoil. The couple's marriage had begun to deteriorate long before the divorce was filed. Jennifer had grappled with alcoholism, a battle that affected her deeply. Yet she had made strides toward recovery, attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and working diligently on her personal growth. Friends remarked on her resilience and strength, particularly during such a trying period. But as the divorce unfolded, the emotional weight became heavier, and Jennifer decided to move in with her mother, Johanna, in Orwigsburg in November 2013. It was a temporary escape from the tension at home, but it came with its own sacrifices, namely, being separated from her children. Jennifer's absence from her kids weighed heavily on her heart. Orwigsburg, a quaint town a couple of hours away from State College, was not where she wanted to be. By April 2014, she could no longer bear the distance and persuaded Johanna to drive her back to State College. The divorce was nearing its conclusion, with the court ordering Sean to pay Jennifer $5,000 a month in spousal support. While this was a relief, it also sparked resentment in Sean, whose demeanor had shifted since the divorce proceedings began. On May 15, 2014, Jennifer left her temporary accommodations, a local hotel, to run errands. She seemed in good spirits, speaking with her mother earlier that day about her plans for the future. She wanted to find an apartment and start anew. Little did anyone know that would be the last day she would be seen. Surveillance footage from a Walmart showed Jennifer leaving the store alone at 4:51 p.m. She was wearing a light-colored V-neck t-shirt and capri pants, carrying a black shoulder bag. Yet, as the hours turned to days, there was no sign of her. When Johanna couldn't reach her the following day, worry turned to panic. By May 20th, she reported Jennifer missing to the Ferguson Township Police. Initially, the police response was tepid. After all, Jennifer was an adult and had every right to go where she pleased. Sean was quickly brought in for questioning, and he shrugged off concerns, suggesting that Jennifer had likely run away to seek treatment. The police took his word, believing he was just a concerned husband. But Johanna and other family members felt a dark cloud hanging over the situation. Days turned into weeks without a trace of Jennifer. The police's investigation, focused primarily on Sean, turned up no leads. They conducted a lie detector test, which Sean reportedly passed, and searched his property with cadaver dogs, but no evidence of foul play emerged. Yet, the timing of Jennifer's disappearance raised suspicions. Just as Sean was about to start making those substantial support payments, his wife vanished. Frustration boiled over in Jennifer's family as the local police appeared to lose interest. They began reaching out to the media, sharing Jennifer's story far and wide. Local residents organized search parties, plastering flyers around town. Every corner of State College was filled with hope and concern for Jennifer's well-being. In the months that followed, new information surfaced. Jennifer had reportedly been seen at a tanning salon and later at a Mexican restaurant on the same day she disappeared. This was a revelation that the police had overlooked, and it reignited hope within her family. Why hadn't the police pursued these leads more vigorously? As a sense of urgency took hold, they hired private investigators who uncovered more about Jennifer's last known whereabouts. But the tension between the family and the police only intensified. They felt that Sean's connections in the community were shielding him from scrutiny. Rumors swirled, suggesting he might know more than he was letting on. Some members of Jennifer's family believed he was involved in her disappearance, while others defended him, creating a rift within the family. The pressure mounted as the anniversary of Jennifer's disappearance approached. The family decided to take action, pushing for the FBI to get involved. They believed that federal resources could breathe new life into the investigation. However, local authorities were reluctant to hand over the case. Chief of Police Diana Conrad responded to the family's pleas with vague reassurances, claiming the case was still active while simultaneously shutting down requests for more information. Meanwhile, Sean maintained his innocence. He even suggested that Jennifer might be alive, having taken off to start a new life elsewhere. This assertion left many baffled, especially considering the lack of any activity on her Social Security number or bank accounts. For Jennifer's family, it felt like a cruel twist of fate. His insurance background allowed him to play the system in ways they couldn't begin to comprehend. As the investigation stagnated, the community began to forget Jennifer. Life continued in State College. But for her family, each passing day without answers was a reminder of the pain they were enduring. Johanna often sat in her daughter's empty room, surrounded by memories. Photos of Jennifer smiling at family gatherings, her children's artwork adorning the walls. It was a constant reminder of what they had lost. 1 year turned into 2, and as time passed, the case grew cold. Jennifer's family continued to fight for answers, pushing for more media coverage and updates. They maintained a Facebook page dedicated to her memory, sharing stories and photos in hopes of keeping her name alive. But as the years rolled on, hope began to dwindle. In a surprising turn, a new lead emerged. An anonymous tip suggested that someone had been trying to file health insurance claims using Jennifer's information. This revelation brought a flicker of hope to her family. Perhaps she was alive somewhere, or maybe it was a case of identity theft. However, when they reported the information to the police, the response was lackluster. They felt dismissed yet again, their fears overshadowed by bureaucratic indifference. Desperate for answers, the family enlisted another private investigator, who traced the claims back to an IP address in New Jersey. While it was a breakthrough, it was a dead end. There were no further leads to follow. The feeling of helplessness was overwhelming. They were constantly left with more questions than answers. The anniversary of Jennifer's disappearance loomed again, and the family organized a vigil in her honor. Friends, family, and community members gathered to share stories, light candles, and remember the woman they loved. But as they stood in solidarity, a wave of grief washed over them. For Johanna, the memories of Jennifer's laughter felt like daggers piercing her heart. The community rallied around Jennifer's family, providing support as they continued their fight for justice. Local news outlets began to cover the story once more, but it wasn't enough. The passage of time had dulled the urgency of the case, and as people moved on with their lives, Jennifer's family felt increasingly isolated in their grief. Years passed, and as the search for Jennifer became a fading memory for some, for her family, the pain remained fresh. They often found themselves recalling happier times, family vacations, birthdays, and quiet evenings spent together. Jennifer had been the heart of their family, and her absence left an unfillable void. On the 5th anniversary of her disappearance, the family decided to make a bold move. They organized a press conference, inviting local and national media to cover the story. They shared their experiences, detailing the struggles they had faced in the search for Jennifer and the ongoing frustration with law enforcement. They hoped to reignite public interest in the case, shining a spotlight on the unanswered questions that still loomed over their lives. As they spoke, the pain in their voices resonated with those in attendance. Each family member shared their memories of Jennifer, painting a vivid picture of the woman they loved and the void left by her absence. Their determination to find answers struck a chord, and for the first time in years, the story gained traction once more. In the wake of the press conference, the police department issued a statement, promising to revisit the case. They acknowledged the oversight in not pursuing all leads thoroughly and assured the family they would take a fresh look at the evidence. While the family welcomed this development, they remained cautious. They had seen promises made before, only to be left feeling abandoned and unheard. Slowly but surely, progress was made. New investigators were assigned to the case, and a fresh set of eyes began to review the evidence. The family felt a renewed sense of hope, and the community rallied behind them once more. As the years continued to roll on, the journey was far from easy. The questions surrounding Jennifer's disappearance remained, but with renewed vigor, her family pressed forward, determined to uncover the truth. The struggle had taken its toll, but their love for Jennifer remained unshakable. They would continue to fight until they had the answers they sought. Thanks for tuning in once again. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe as visit our new Spotify channel. Thank you and God bless. The case took a shocking turn in August 2021 when a fire engulfed the home where Caitlyn had disappeared. Firefighters responded to a call about the blaze, but by the time they arrived, the house was already a total loss. Tragically, Crystal, Scott's girlfriend and the woman involved in the argument with Caitlyn, was found dead in the basement. She was just 36 years old. The circumstances surrounding the fire raised even more questions. Was it merely an accident? How had Crystal died, and why was she unable to escape? Scott, listed as the only survivor, moved to a nearby town shortly after the tragedy. The fire sparked renewed interest in Caitlyn's case, as many wondered if there was a connection between the two events. Caitlyn's family faced an uphill battle for answers. Scott's detachment and reluctance to discuss Caitlyn's disappearance deepened the family's frustration. They struggled to comprehend why the investigation seemed to lack urgency, especially given the circumstances surrounding both Caitlyn's and Crystal's cases. The terrain where Caitlyn vanished was rural and rugged, making it difficult for anyone, including seasoned hikers, to navigate. Standing Stone State Park, a popular area nearby, was filled with dense woods and steep trails, but the family believed Caitlyn wouldn't have remained lost in the woods for long. They theorized that she might have left with someone, but without any leads. The case grew colder by the day. As months passed, Caitlyn's family sought help from new authorities after a change in the sheriff's office. Hope arose that Caitlyn's case would finally receive the attention it deserved. However, they were devastated to learn that crucial evidence, including Caitlyn's cell phone records, had been lost. The absence of this information left them feeling abandoned in their search for the truth. Today, Caitlyn Leadbetter remains missing, and her case is a haunting reminder of the many unanswered questions that linger. Caitlyn is described as a Caucasian woman, 5 feet 2 inches tall, weighing around 160 pounds, with long blonde hair and blue eyes. At the time of her disappearance, she was wearing a blue sleeveless cropped shirt, white pajama shorts with blue polka dots, and was barefoot, ill-equipped for the wilderness. Family and friends continue to advocate for Caitlyn, urging anyone with information to come forward. They established a Facebook page, Help Find Missing Caitlyn Leadbetter, to raise awareness and keep her story alive. The more people who hear her story, the greater the chance that someone might provide a lead. Caitlyn's siblings, devastated by the loss of both their mother and now their sister, reflect on the struggles within their family. They feel a growing estrangement from their father, Scott, who seems to have moved on without confronting the grief and uncertainty surrounding Caitlyn's case. The family's unity has been fractured, with Caitlyn's disappearance serving as a painful reminder of their shared trauma. As the 3-year mark approaches since Caitlyn vanished, her story deserves renewed attention. There are countless unanswered questions. Why did Caitlyn jump out of the window instead of using the door? What really happened in the hours leading up to her disappearance? Were there any other witnesses to the argument between Caitlyn and Crystal? Why did the police fail to take her disappearance seriously from the start? Caitlyn Leadbetter's case remains unsolved, a heartbreaking mystery that demands answers. If you have any information regarding Caitlyn's whereabouts, please contact the Overton County Sheriff's Office at 931-823-5635. Together, we can push for justice and help bring Caitlyn home to her family. Caitlyn Leadbetter was born and raised in the outskirts of Indianapolis, Indiana, where her childhood seemed idyllic. Her parents, Tracy and Scott Leadbetter, were successful in the real estate market, providing a comfortable life for Caitlyn and her siblings, at least for a time. However, as the years passed, financial struggles began to plague the family, ultimately leading to the couple's divorce in 1999. Caitlyn and her siblings stayed in Indianapolis, supported by relatives until tragedy struck in 2013. Caitlyn's mother passed away unexpectedly at just 38 years old, leaving Caitlyn, then 18, to grapple with the loss. After her mother's death, Caitlyn and her younger brother moved to Overton County, Tennessee, to live with their father, Scott. Despite the upheaval in their lives, Caitlyn tried to find normalcy. By 2021, at age 25, she lived with her father and his girlfriend, Crystal. Caitlyn was working and had been in a committed relationship with her boyfriend, Dustin, for over a year. Everything seemed to be on track for Caitlyn until the morning of May 2, 2021. a day that would alter her family's life forever. On that fateful morning, a heated argument erupted between Caitlyn and Crystal. The details surrounding the confrontation are murky. Some reports suggest it involved Caitlyn's boyfriend staying over, while others imply it was related to the family dog. Whatever the cause, the altercation escalated to the point where Caitlyn felt threatened. In a panic, she jumped out of her bedroom window in her pajamas barefoot and ran into the nearby woods. Scott witnessed this distressing scene, seeing his daughter dash into the dense trees behind their home. As the hours passed and Caitlyn failed to return, concern mounted. By 7 a.m., a family member received a peculiar text message from Caitlyn, though it was oddly worded and seemed unlike her. Confusingly, Caitlyn had left the house without her phone, raising questions about how she could have sent a text. That afternoon, Scott reached out to Caitlyn's sister, Kay, informing her of the situation. Alarmed, Kay immediately made the 5-hour drive to help search for Caitlyn. The following morning on May 3rd, Kay insisted on reporting Caitlyn missing. Her instincts told her something was wrong. Yet, when they arrived at the police station at 9:20 a.m., they were met with disbelief. Officers refused to file a missing persons report, stating that Caitlyn was an adult who could leave of her own accord if she chose to. Confused and frustrated, Kay and Scott left the station, their worry deepening as they realized no one was taking their concerns seriously. Without the police's assistance, Caitlyn's family and friends took it upon themselves to search the woods and surrounding areas. However, Scott's participation in the search was minimal, leading to suspicion among family members. Why wasn't he more involved? Did he truly believe Caitlyn was okay, or did he know something more? For a week, Caitlyn's family scoured the woods, but there was no sign of her. The terrain in Overton County is notoriously rough, characterized by dense woods and steep slopes, making any search difficult. Despite the odds, her loved ones were determined to find her. It wasn't until a week later that the police finally agreed to bring search dogs to Caitlyn's home, but they only tracked her scent to the road, no further into the woods. Adding to the mystery, Caitlyn's phone records were lost by the previous detectives investigating her case, a crucial piece of evidence that could have provided insight into her last moments. Meanwhile, Caitlyn's social media accounts remained inactive, and her family feared the worst. Sarah Kinslow grew up in a vibrant household in Greenville, Texas, where love and music filled the air. Born on June 14, 1986, she was the second of 4 children in the Kinslow family. Her parents, John and Louise, encouraged her passions, especially her remarkable talent for singing and playing the piano. Every Christmas morning, she was the first awake, bounding into her parents' room with her stocking, ready to spread holiday cheer and excitement. As Sarah entered her teenage years, however, the light that once shone so brightly began to flicker. At just 14, she became infatuated with an 18-year-old named Curtis Wayne Bell, a young man known for his reckless lifestyle and connection to drugs. Despite her parents' concerns, Sarah was drawn to Curtis, and her rebellion soon escalated. She began to defy her parents' rules, staying out late and distancing herself from her once close family. On May 1, 2001, John dropped Sarah off at Greenville Middle School earlier than usual. She mentioned plans to meet some friends before classes started. Little did he know that this would be the last time he would see his daughter. As the school day ended, Sarah did not return home. Alarm bells rang in her parents' minds when they received a call from the school reporting her absence. In a growing state of panic, John and Louise began calling Sarah's friends. One friend revealed that a group had planned to skip school that day and meet at East Mount Cemetery, but Sarah had never shown up. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, they reported her missing to the police. Authorities initially labeled Sarah a runaway, a classification her family reluctantly accepted due to her recent behavior. Investigators questioned her friends and Curtis, who claimed he had no idea where she was. Some friends took polygraph tests, but the results were inconclusive, adding to the confusion. Search dogs were brought to the school. Tracking Sarah's scent for 2 blocks before it abruptly stopped, suggesting she may have gotten into a vehicle. As days turned into weeks, Sarah's family worked tirelessly to keep her name in the public eye, distributing flyers throughout Greenville and Quinlan, where Curtis lived. They quickly discovered that some of their flyers in Quinlan had mysteriously disappeared, heightening their concern. Rumors began to swirl, suggesting that Sarah had run away to escape an abusive home life. This notion shattered her family, who were desperate to find her. Sarah's older brother, Jerry, was in prison at the time, but communicated with others who knew Curtis. They relayed disturbing stories about Curtis's past, deepening the family's fears about what might have happened to Sarah. In a bid to find their daughter, the Kinslows enlisted the help of missing person organizations, which conducted searches around Quinlan and a property near Lake Towaconi linked to Curtis. While nothing was found, unsettling theories emerged, including the possibility that Sarah may have been harmed and buried on the property. Louise identified a suspicious rectangular mark on the land, visible from satellite images, that haunted her thoughts. As the investigation progressed, Curtis was arrested for unrelated charges of sexual assault involving another minor. Although authorities wanted to charge him concerning Sarah's case, they lacked sufficient evidence. He served a brief jail sentence before violating parole, but the Kinslows remained without answers about their daughter. As the first anniversary of Sarah's disappearance approached, her family refused to let her story fade. They appeared on talk shows and worked tirelessly to raise awareness. Then, an anonymous handwritten letter arrived, suggesting they speak with a woman named Lisa St. Clair. When they approached Lisa, she claimed to have no knowledge of Sarah's fate. Undeterred, Louise dug deeper into Lisa's connections, discovering that Lisa was friends with Amber, another friend of Sarah's. The twists in Sarah's story didn't stop there. Over the years, several unconfirmed sightings of her emerged, each igniting a flicker of hope. On the day of her disappearance, a witness claimed to have seen her getting into an older blue Ford pickup truck, driven by a man in his 30s. Other sightings reported her at a nearby gas station, and even in a Walmart, often accompanied by Curtis. Yet, each lead fizzled, leaving her family grasping at straws. Greenville, with a population of about 25,000, was close-knit, and the Kinslow family worked tirelessly to ensure Sarah was not forgotten. They plastered flyers everywhere, reached out to local media, and engaged with the community. Despite their efforts, the trail grew cold, and the once vibrant rumors began to fade into whispers. As the years rolled by, the Kinslows held on to hope, believing that Sarah might still be alive. They envisioned her living a new life somewhere, free from the troubles that had once enveloped her. Yet, with each passing year, the reality set in that she might never come home. Her case became a somber reminder of the fragility of life and the dark realities many young people face. Today, Sarah would be 36 years old. She is described as a white female with shoulder-length blonde hair and blue eyes. At the time of her disappearance, she stood about 5 feet 4 inches and weighed around 100 pounds. Distinctive features included a tattoo of the letter L on her ankle, chickenpox scars on her face, crooked teeth, and multiple ear piercings. Sarah's story is not just about a missing girl. It is about a family's enduring love and hope. The Kinslows continue to search for answers, reaching out to the community, law enforcement, and anyone who might hold a piece of the puzzle. They urge anyone with information to come forward, believing that one day they may finally uncover the truth. If you have any information regarding the whereabouts of Sarah Kinslow, please contact the Greenville Police Department at 903-457-2900. October 2022 marked a new chapter in Selena Garcia's life, or so her family hoped. Having just been released from jail after serving over 30 days for trespassing and lying to a police officer, Selena was eager to move forward. She was the youngest of 7 siblings, cherished by her close-knit family, especially her sisters. As the evening of October 6th approached, her sister reached out, thrilled to hear from her after such a tumultuous time. Their text conversation was lively and full of hope, reflecting a bond that had weathered the storms of life. The next day, Selena casually mentioned she was going out with friends. It seemed like a typical response from someone ready to embrace freedom again. But when her sister texted her later that week, she found her messages were read but unanswered. A gnawing anxiety settled in. This wasn't like Selena at all. Selena had always been a responsive communicator. The silence stretched for days, each unanswered message fueling her sister's concern. A few months prior, a young Hispanic girl named Susana Morales had gone missing in their area, adding to the eerie backdrop of uncertainty that surrounded Selena's sudden disappearance. With each passing day, fear mounted. Her sister felt a gut instinct that something was terribly wrong. By October 12th, Selena's family had exhausted their own efforts to locate her and reached out to law enforcement. However, the authorities were dismissive. After all, Selena was 25 years old, an adult who didn't have to report in daily. They reassured the family that she would likely return when she was ready, but the family felt a sense of urgency. Their instincts told them otherwise. It wasn't until October 23rd that Selena was officially declared a missing person. The search for Selena became an uphill battle. With limited resources and the dismissal of their concerns by law enforcement, her family felt abandoned. They began combing through familiar areas, asking friends and acquaintances if anyone had seen her. Their desperation was palpable. They were determined not to give up hope. In an emotional plea, her sister spoke to the media, declaring, "We're never going to give up on her. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Her family is looking for her, and we're not going to stop. I know that somebody out there knows something." The words echoed through the community, rallying support for Selena's cause. As her family pressed for answers, they learned of a troubling text that Selena had sent to a friend on the evening of October 7th. When asked if she was safe, Selena replied, "Yes, but I'd rather be with you." This cryptic response raised even more questions. What had prompted her friend to ask if she was safe? And why did Selena express a desire to be elsewhere? It was reported that she had been seen in Lamberton, Georgia, a familiar area for her, where she often spent time with friends. However, her friends' identities and whereabouts became a point of contention. With another missing person case haunting the neighboring town of Norcross, tension mounted in the community, and Selena's disappearance became part of a larger narrative of concern for young Hispanic women in the area. Selena's family became increasingly frustrated with law enforcement's perceived lack of urgency. They felt her past legal issues clouded the investigation, leading officials to speculate that she might have gone on the run. But those who knew her believed she would never abandon her family voluntarily. The charges against her were minor. She had served her time and was ready to reclaim her life. As days turned into weeks, Selena's family organized search parties, plastered flyers around their community, and reached out to local media outlets. They hoped for a breakthrough that would lead to new information, but the search proved arduous and emotionally draining. The landscape of Gwinnett County, Georgia, where Selena lived, was a mix of urban areas and sprawling parks, providing many places to explore. Yet, the geography posed challenges for search efforts. With a population nearing 1 million, the task of sifting through neighborhoods and parks felt daunting. Authorities assured the family that they were investigating, but as the days passed, the trail grew colder. Selena's sister found herself questioning everything. Who were the friends she had been with? What were they doing on the night she disappeared? Did someone else have her phone, which continued to register read receipts without any replies? As word of Selena's disappearance spread, the community began to rally. Local activists organized vigils and protests, demanding justice for all missing women, including Selena. The outpouring of support was heartwarming yet tragic, underscoring the fear that so many families shared. Selena was described as a 25-year-old Hispanic woman, 5 feet 4 inches, with brown eyes and shoulder-length light brown hair. She was vibrant, full of life, and deserving of a second chance. The community was determined to keep her story alive, shining a light on the many unanswered questions surrounding her case. The authorities remained tight-lipped, but the family held on to hope. They refused to believe that Selena had simply vanished without a trace. With every new lead and tip, they were reminded of the power of community and the importance of never giving up on someone you love. Selena Garcia's case is far from closed, and the lingering questions remain. Where is she? What happened in those final days before she vanished? Did someone know something crucial that could help unravel the mystery? If you have any information regarding the whereabouts of Selena Garcia, please reach out to the authorities. Jeanette and Danette Milbrook were not just twin sisters. They were the closest of friends. Growing up in Augusta, Georgia, they shared everything, secrets, dreams, and the joys of adolescence. At just 15 years old, they were described by friends and family as bright, loving, and well-liked. Surrounded by a supportive network of family and friends, they enjoyed their youthful days filled with laughter and hope. But on March 18, 1990, everything changed when the twins vanished without a trace. The day began like any other Sunday for the Milbrook family. Jeanette and Danette attended church with their family, a routine that instilled a sense of community and belonging. After service, the girls walked to a nearby Church's Chicken for lunch, chatting and giggling as they made their way back home. Everything seemed perfectly ordinary until they confided in their mother about a strange feeling they had, an eerie sense that someone might have been following them. Although they were uneasy, they dismissed it as mere imagination, perhaps an overactive teenage mind. After lunch, the twins decided to visit their godfather to borrow some money for snacks. He handed them $20, a small amount that would soon lead them on a path that would change their lives forever. They then made their way to their cousin's house, hoping to have her join them on an outing to a local gas station convenience store. However, their cousin's mother wouldn't allow her to go out, warning that it was getting dark. Undeterred, Jeanette and Danette set off alone. The decision to walk by themselves was unusual. They often sought companionship when venturing out. But on this day, they felt an undeniable urge to go, an itch for adventure that would prove fateful. Before heading to the gas station, the twins stopped by their older sister's house. They hoped she might accompany them, but she had just given birth and couldn't leave. Disappointed but resolute, Jeanette and Danette continued on their journey, arriving at the gas station at the corner of 12th Street and Martin Luther King Boulevard. Gloria, the store clerk, recognized them immediately. She later recounted that the girls seemed cheerful and normal as they entered the store, purchasing chips, candy, and soda. Gloria had no sense of anything amiss. In fact, she remembered them leaving without any hesitation. After that, however, the trail goes cold. As evening fell and the girls did not return home, their mother grew concerned. Jeanette and Danette had always been responsible, and this behavior was out of character. The clock ticked by agonizingly, and when the twins failed to show up by nightfall, Mary, their mother, decided to take action. Mary called the police, reporting her daughters missing. However, she was met with skepticism. Officers suggested the girls might have run away and advised her to wait 24 hours before filing an official report. This response shocked Mary. Her daughters were good students with no history of trouble. The dismissive attitude of law enforcement left her feeling helpless and frustrated. After a harrowing night filled with worry, Mary reported Jeanette and Danette missing. The investigation was, unfortunately, lackluster from the start. Law enforcement officials seemed convinced that the twins had simply left home willingly, dismissing the possibility of foul play. Family members quickly mobilized, reaching out to friends and community members in an effort to find the girls. They searched local hangouts, called acquaintances, and distributed flyers. Despite their efforts, no one had seen Jeanette and Danette since their visit to the gas station. Gloria, the clerk, recalled their cheerful demeanor, but no one else reported any sightings. Time passed, and the family's anguish deepened as each day without answers turned into weeks, then months. Just over a year later, the Milbrook family received devastating news. Their case file had been closed. Officers at the station told them that they had deemed Jeanette and Danette runaways, a label that felt utterly wrong to their family. They learned that law enforcement had stopped actively investigating the twins' disappearance, which left the family reeling. Desperate for answers, The Milbrooks continued their own search, checking in with the police regularly. Each time, they were met with the same dismissive attitude, with some officers suggesting they accept the girls were gone. The pain of losing their daughters, compounded by the frustration of being treated as if they didn't matter, was unbearable. In 1993, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children received a report claiming the girls had been found. The family, once again filled with hope, was soon crushed when they learned the information was false. They were given conflicting stories, with one officer claiming the girls were safe in foster care, while another said there was nothing they could do since the twins were now 17 and considered adults. Each contradictory statement deepened their wounds, leaving the family feeling utterly betrayed. Shanta Sturgis, Jeanette and Danette's younger sister, was only 12 when her sisters vanished. The memory of that day and the subsequent heartbreak remained etched in her mind. As an adult, she took it upon herself to advocate for her sisters, determined to have their case reopened. In 2004, she began reaching out to law enforcement, pleading for renewed investigation efforts, but her calls often fell on deaf ears. It wasn't until 2013 that Shanta's persistence finally bore fruit. Richmond County Sheriff Richard Roundtree announced the reopening of the case, a moment of hope for the Milbrook family. However, when Sheriff Roundtree examined the records, he was shocked to discover that the case file had disappeared entirely. For 23 years, Jeanette and Danette's case had seemingly vanished from the system. With no existing file, Sheriff Roundtree had to start from scratch. He worked closely with the family, entering the twins' DNA into national databases, hoping to find a match. Yet, time and again they encountered dead ends. Shanta did not give up. She tirelessly sought media attention to raise awareness for her sister's case. In 2017, the podcast The Fall Line dedicated a season to the Milbrook twins' story, bringing their case back into the public eye. Another podcast, Unresolved, also covered the twins' disappearance in early 2018. Both shows collaborated to raise funds for a $10,000 reward for any tips leading to information about the twins, and worked together to put up billboards in the Augusta area. What happened to Jeanette and Danette on that fateful day in March? Theories abound, and the questions only multiply. Did they encounter someone dangerous after leaving the gas station? Augusta is situated near major highways that connect to larger cities like Atlanta and Columbia, leading to speculation that they could have been abducted and trafficked. Both girls were good students, well-liked by peers and teachers alike. They had their whole lives ahead of them, and their sudden disappearance was baffling to everyone who knew them. Described as black females with black hair and brown eyes, Jeanette and Danette were vibrant and full of potential. At the time of their disappearance, Jeanette was wearing a blue pullover shirt, a white turtleneck, a beige skirt, white stockings, and white sneakers. Danette was in a white shirt featuring Mickey Mouse, white jeans, and black shoes. Jeanette stood about 5 feet 4 inches and weighed around 125 pounds, while Danette was slightly taller at 5 feet 6 inches and weighed approximately 130 pounds. Now, decades later, they would both be 49 years old. Their family continues to seek answers and justice, clinging to the hope that one day they will find out what happened to their beloved daughters and sisters. If you have any information about Jeanette and Danette Milbrook, please reach out to the Richmond County Sheriff's Office at 706-821-0960. Their family still yearns for closure, and your information can help shed light on their case.